Well, good afternoon and welcome to the latest in the Transport Technology Forum series of, we used to think of them as fireside chats, but perhaps not quite yet as autumn comes across the country. Today we've got a slightly different format because we're talking about traffic signal maintenance, and we've got a substantial audience of attendees from local authorities who have benefited from or who aspire to benefit from the largesse of the Department for Transport, which has dug into its pockets and found some money for maintaining traffic signals. Maybe not the most exciting subject you'd have thought, but actually what we want to understand, what we suspect we knew all along, but what we've got to prove is that having effective traffic signals in place, working as well as they were designed to, is a positive thing for traffic and therefore for the economy, for the environment, and for all of us. I'm pleased to be joined here today by Darren and Bradley. Darren's going to go first, and he's going to be saying something to us about the funding model that he and colleagues at the Department for Transport have developed and the obligations that come with receiving this money, which I think is so important, that we don't just spend the money and say, there, that's all working, that's fine, but that we create, we generate, we capture, we analyze the evidence, because that's the only way we're going to get the money second or third time round. I've worked, as some of you will know, I've worked in the Transport Department for many years. I've worked with colleagues in the Treasury for many years. And if what you want to do is to have a good, solid business case for getting the money to do the things you know need doing, well, that solid business case needs evidence. So with no further ado, I'm just going to say we're going to start with Darren, who's going to talk to us about the funding model. We're then going to move to Bradley, who's going to talk to us about the SBRI Path project. And then there's going to be time, about 20 minutes, for questions which I will hopefully pick up from the sidebar that I can see in front of me, and which Darren and Bradley will answer masterfully. So think of the things you want to know, and if you log questions and we don't get to answer them all, then I'm confident that Darren has little else to do over the coming weekend but to sit and answer them. Right, on that note, I'm now going to hand over to Darren. Darren, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Steve, for that masterly introduction. Seeing as we're using the word masterly is obviously the word of the day. Right, so as Steve said, this is really a slightly special fireside, poolside chat, whatever we're calling them these days, from the TTF, and this is really to go through the £15 million of funding that we've handed out to deal with traffic signals. As Steve also said, this is very much about understanding what this funding is for, what we as the department are looking to achieve from this, and the overarching thing we're looking to achieve is to be able to do this again, is to be able to build this into a regular program of signal maintenance, in the same way that we have regular programs of bridge maintenance and carriageway repair and other items of highway maintenance. So the money that we have this year is excess money from the highway maintenance program. This was given to us to spend on this to prove the point that this is worth doing. It's a one-year settlement, but there really is an opportunity to build this into business as usual, build this into what the department does if we get this right. And what I want to really do today is just talk about what we expect from this, beyond just going out and fixing rusty signal poles and changing broken bulbs, because this really is about more than that. And I also want to explain a little bit about how the process will work going forward, because again, we expect a little bit more from authorities than just going away and spending the money on rusty poles and broken bulbs. So what I want to do is just spend 20 minutes just going through that. And again, to reiterate the point that Steve just made, we want to make a business case for this internally. We want to make a business case that works with the senior management at DFT. We want to make a case that allows them to go to Treasury and try and build this into our yearly highway maintenance settlement. Now, as many of you will know, all highway authorities get a yearly settlement. You get money from the government to fix stuff, say, bridges and carriageways, street lighting, deal with flood alleviation, lots of other things. What you don't have, what I don't think we've ever had in certainly my 20 or 30 years of working in this industry, we've never had specific funding to deal with traffic signals and traffic technology maintenance. So there's a real opportunity here to change that and do that. So if I could have the next slide, please, Alec. I'm having to do this Chris Whitty style because I can't get the presentation to run on my screen, so I'll be using the now famous "next slide, please" phrase. Right. Okay. So those of you that completed the challenge, and I think most of the successful authorities are with us today, so congratulations to those of you that did, will have seen these 7 key challenges, and these were basically what we asked you to do. So many of you may have been slightly surprised when you saw the bidding criteria, that we weren't asking for how many junctions you had, how many were broken, what your maintenance regime was, and how much you spent a year. We didn't ask those types of questions because we took for granted that any authority that has traffic signals is likely to have a maintenance backlog, is likely to be struggling to maintain infrastructure, because certainly the soundings we've taken and the things we've said in previous TTF meetings have very much brought that point home, that nobody is doing this perfectly. We all know that everyone has problems. So we wanted to think beyond that. We wanted to think about, well, how do we tie traffic signal maintenance into wider objectives, the things that we need to be doing? How do we make the point that traffic signals are and will continue to be absolutely central to how we deliver transport policy in cities, how we prepare for future technology, for connected vehicles, how we ensure that the road network can play its role in dealing with congestion, we're dealing with emissions, supporting active travel, supporting local economic vitality, all these types of things that both locally and nationally we want to do. What we wanted to do was really cement in government's minds, and maybe in local authority officers' minds as well, the role that transport signals can play in that. And part of that was really on trying to think, and again, without wanting to defame anybody here, that was partly about getting traffic signals engineers, such as I used to be, to think more broadly than maybe we sometimes do about signal maintenance, and think about the role that signals play more widely than just as traffic signals. So we asked you all to think about 7 challenges, and you all did. And I think at this point it's worth saying that we had over 100, just slightly over 100 responses, applications for this funding, and it was open to all local highway authorities outside of London. So it was open to, I think, 122 potential authorities. So we got slightly over 100. That's an incredible response. That's a better response than we've had in living memory for a funding bid of this sort. We got over 101 responses. We were able to fund 39 of those. We were able to fund 21 with £500,000 each, and 18 with £250,000 each, and that very luckily it adds up to exactly £15 million, which is the budget we had. And the way that we did that was we looked at the answers that people gave to these 7 challenges, and what we asked you all to do via the LCRIG website, which hopefully many of you are now familiar with, is we asked people to think about the 7 challenges and provide us evidence about how you currently address them, and how maintaining traffic signals would help you do that better. And again, this is about broadening this beyond just, I have 6 broken traffic lights in my borough, I'd like to fix them now, please, to thinking more generally about how traffic signals can play a role in wider policy delivery. So we asked you to think about provide a plan for improvements. We asked you to think, and really this was about trying to get to the degree to which authorities have a forward plan for maintenance. Do authorities know the scale of the problem? Do authorities know the life expectancy and the remaining life of their asset? Do they understand where the worst case junctions are? Do they understand where the problems really are? And this was, of the 7 challenges, this was the one that dealt with those kind of nuts and bolts issues of signal maintenance. How do you actually, what do you need to fix? What order do you need to fix it in? What plan have you got for understanding your asset and maintaining it and knowing its condition? In the second challenge, we asked for a prioritised upgrade plan, and again, this was about more than just, I want to fix a junction because it's currently not got any detection. This was asking people to think about how that plan would play out more widely. How does it fit into wider upgrade plans? How would you prioritise it? Not in terms of just give me a list of sites, but what methodology do you use to think about your asset? How would you target that? If further funding was to come forward, how would you use the mechanism to spend further funding? In other words, how methodically do you think about the asset you have, its condition, the role it plays in society, in the transport network, and in what order would you target that? How would you spend money to ensure the best sort of bang for the buck in terms of maintenance? We then asked authorities to tell us about carbon reduction and air quality targets. Now, of course, this is increasingly important, and it's probably even more important now than it was even 6 months ago when we drafted these questions. COP26 is but a few weeks away. We're but a few weeks away from having the whole world descend on Glasgow to set new targets for decarbonisation. It's now absolutely central to the way that government and the DfT thinks about the world. It's now, since we published our national transport decarbonisation plan back in the summer, it's now become the word through the stick of rock. No matter which way you split the stick of rock, the word is always there. It's the same with the way that we think about transport now. It doesn't matter what you're thinking about, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Decarbonisation is absolutely central to that. We're seeing more authorities declaring climate emergencies and thinking about decarbonisation holistically across their areas. Traffic signals clearly have a role to play in that. Traffic signals are maybe one of the few absolute levers that we have in terms of transport that we can operate at very short notice to think about to deal with carbon, because they are the main tool we have to deal with demand. So how do you think about your traffic signals in terms of a wider decarbonisation and air quality plan? Do you do that? Do you think about that? Does your authority think of traffic signals as part of that strategy? That was the sort of thing we were looking for, and the authorities that did well were the ones that had clear plans to think about and understand how traffic signals could play a role in that. Monitoring plans, indicators and targets, again, are very important. And again, this goes back to the point that Steve made at the beginning. We want to know that the money we're spending now is not only useful in fixing the things you said you'd fix, but is also a useful pointer to what we could do with even more money. So having monitoring plans and targets in place that authorities can use, that we can understand, that we can report back to ministers, is vitally important, because that helps us show the value of this. It helps us show what value we get for our £50 million. It helps us show how this works locally. It helps us understand, and helps us be able to assure senior management, Treasury, that local authorities have got a grip on this and understand the benefit of the money that we're giving them, and how that plays out in the longer term. Technology vision was again trying to think about the future. So again, if you were to start replacing equipment, what vision do you have to put new equipment in? How will you support new communications technologies? How will you think about technologies that allow you to maintain more effectively? How will you, where you have systems and detection, loop-based detection systems, a good example. Many authorities tell us that they are unable to maintain their loop asset. It's too big, there are too many of them, they're too broken. It's very unlikely they will ever get them all working. Well, what sort of vision do you have for moving away from that, for using new technology? Do you have a vision? Have you trialed technologies? Do you have plans and strategies in place to deal with that? Being able to tell us that gave us assurance that the money we spent today wouldn't require being respent very shortly, because all the new stuff had broken like the old stuff did, but actually that we were moving forward and using new technologies to make the asset more maintainable, more sustainable in the future. And the sixth challenge again was around this was very much around the wider benefit of signals beyond just congestion. So traffic signals have a huge importance in terms of active travel, in terms of vulnerable road users, in terms of ensuring access to the network for all, for people who find it difficult to navigate the highway network, whether that's through restricted mobility, whether that's because they are trying to walk and cycle in very busy road networks, or whatever. The traffic signals are clearly very important in that. So we asked people to explain to us how upgrading traffic signals equipment could change that. What new technologies would you think about putting in place to help with those agendas around active travel and vulnerable road users, etc. And question 7 was around future proofing. So again, this is the question where we asked people to think about connected vehicles, about the potential coming of autonomy, about big data, about many of the issues that in the TTF we talk about regularly, and about many of the ITS issues that we are interested in now. So how will traffic signals form a part of that? And I think it's fair to say that for a good number of years yet, until traffic control moves completely within the cabin of the vehicle, which will probably be long beyond the end of my working life, until that happens, traffic signals will be probably the key on-street element for how we manage traffic in a connected world. A lot of that is a long way away, but when we put traffic signal asset in the ground that has a 15-year lifespan, it's important that we're thinking about that. So this challenge was really digging into what plans authorities had and how they intended to deal with that, how they intended to think about new technology, how they were horizon scanning and working with other parts of the authority to think about what the future may look like and what we need to be building now to try and hedge the best outcome in that. So those were the 7 challenges. And I say we had a very wide range of responses to those, and I know many of you are keen to get feedback, and I know that those of you that were successful are, and certainly those that weren't successful are very keen to get feedback. Unfortunately, with I think 103 entries that we had, an hour each would take pretty much a full month of my working life to get round and give everyone feedback. So I'm not able to do that. So what we're doing, what we've kind of built in this exercise is we now have answers to 7 challenges from 103 authorities, from the bulk of authorities in England. That's a massive resource. That gives us more understanding of how people are thinking about and using traffic signals in their cities than we've ever had. So 2 things will come from that. We intend to produce a report based on all your contributions that sets out clearly for ministers and for others, again for the Treasury, what traffic signals are doing, how people are thinking about them, what the problems are, what the opportunities are, how this asset is being viewed by the local authorities. Because again, that helps build the case for further investment. The other thing we'll do with that resource that we have is produce a toolkit to allow those that weren't successful or those that want to think about how they responded. But we'll show some good examples. We'll show some best practice, some exemplars, discuss how we would have tackled these challenges. And again, that's a resource that we will make freely available through the TTF to allow people to bid better next time. Now, let's hope there is a next time. If there is, we want more success. This, I think, is the fairest way for us to give feedback, because there are just too many people wanting feedback for us to be able to do it individually. So as well as this being a very useful way of handing the money out, it's also, as I say, given us an unprecedented understanding of traffic signals, an unprecedented resource to use to think about and talk about the problems that we regularly talk about through the TTF. Right, so where do we go from here? So next slide, please, Alec. Thank you. So the Section 31 determination letters, that's a great bit of central government jargon, isn't it? I think we'll do a bit of that, have gone out this week. So really what that is Section 31 of the Local Government Act 2003 is the mechanism by which we paid this money. That's the mechanism by which you all get your highway maintenance grants each year. This grant is basically additional funding. So you will have received that money last week. It went out on Friday, so it will be in your authority's bank accounts probably now. You will be getting a letter this week advising you that you've been given that money, and this is an addendum to the Section 31 funding you receive each year to maintain the highway. So that process has happened, or is currently happening. So what I would say to you all is start emailing your finance people and ask them where the £500,000 is, because it's there somewhere in your authority's accounts. The next stage of this is to start to think about how we report progress. And as I say, we don't want to hand the money out and then forget about it. We don't want to just see that just disappears, and some people do stuff, some don't, and we never really understand that. It's crucial that we understand what's been done with this money. It's crucial that we understand the impact it's had. That's central to us being able to reinforce and renew this funding in future years. So using the TTF website, we intend to produce a portal which will be available by the 1st of November. And that portal will allow authorities to upload the plans that they intend to deliver. So the work plans, the sites that they intend to deliver, the start and end dates of the various schemes, the cost of each scheme, that type of information will be uploaded to the portal. Now that will be visible only to you and to DFT. It won't be visible to anybody else. Everybody, in the same way that the challenge worked, you'll get an individual login and you'll be able to go and do that through the portal. But that will give us a basic picture at the beginning of the program that will show exactly what people want to do. Now, you'll be aware that at the start of this, we didn't actually ask you for a program. We asked you to fill in the challenges. The program is very much based on how much funding you've got and how you intend to meet those challenges. That's why we're not asking for the program now, but we now want you to upload a program, and the site to do that will be available by the 1st of November, all being well, and we will ask you to spend November uploading your work plans. And this won't be an onerous task, but it will give us an overview of what everyone's doing. And the site will be built so you can go back in and update progress regularly, at least quarterly, but hopefully more than that. So again, internally, through the back of the site, I can see across the picture and I can see progress. I can see how people are going at spending the money. This gives us that very first indication of, is the money being spent? Are schemes being delivered? And beyond the very esoteric subjects we've talked about with the 7 challenges. That's the first thing we need to know. Is the money being spent? Are traffic signals being improved? Bradley will come on after me to talk about the PATH project, which is a project that we've funded through the Small Business Research Initiative, which has built a tool that we believe is going to be very useful for understanding how traffic signal improvements impact the network and understanding where traffic signal improvements should be made. We're now working with INRIX. Bradley's from INRIX. We're working with INRIX to work out how that tool can be used both nationally and locally to support this program and to start to understand some of the benefits in terms of traffic congestion and traffic movement that signals maintenance and this money generates. Again, that'll be one of the main ways in which we report the more esoteric, the more sort of secondary benefits of the work we're doing beyond simply just the research. Bradley will talk about that in a minute, and we're currently working on how we can roll that out, and there will be more information around that. As I've said, we're about to produce some guidance. Now, there are 2 pieces of guidance coming. There's a piece of guidance I've just told you about, which is scooping up everything we've learned from the 7 challenges and building that into where are we now, where is traffic signals in the UK piece of guidance. We also have some wider ITS evaluation guidance that's been produced by the DFT's Evaluation Centre of Excellence, which will again help authorities in working out how to evaluate the impacts and benefits of this work and wider ITS work as well. And we'll be launching that on the 21st of October. The feedback guidance in the form of a toolkit will be released by the end of the year. That will allow everyone to understand where they went right and where they went wrong in terms of filling the challenges in and how they can do that maybe better, maybe more in line with our thinking for the next year, if we have a next year. Next slide, please. So just a couple of quick parish notices before I hand over to Brad. So as I said, we will be launching guidance on the 21st of October, and the significance of that date is that's the next TTF meeting and our first actual face-to-face meeting where we get to see people in 3 dimensions without our names sort of stuck down here at the bottom, actually in real life. Can't wait. And that's at the National Rail Museum in York, and that primarily is showcasing the work that Bradley's been doing and INRIX have been doing with the SBRI project and the other 2 SBRI congestion challenge projects that we funded. So we'll be talking about them. We'll be talking about some of the other things that have been happening. And as we always do with TTF events, we'll be talking about the challenges and the opportunities that face the ITS sector, networking and learning from each other, just doing the good stuff that we're all yearning to do after 18 months sat staring at a screen. That's the 21st. Please book spaces. I think there are still spaces for that. So if you haven't booked already, please do. It should be a great event. The last thing I need to do is just quickly update you on something which is slightly tangential to this, but this is something called DSIS, the Digital Controller Information Standard. And this is about starting to understand how as a nation we could have a national digital platform, a national standard for how we describe traffic signals. So the Topaz 2500 form that many of you will be familiar with, that we use to describe signal logic and control data, how do we digitize that in a way that can be uploaded and used and shared more freely? And in the same way that we digitize traffic regulation orders recently and working on parking data, we're doing the same for controllers. We're looking now at the concept of what that could be and whether it could work or not. We have a questionnaire out because at the moment we are working on the concept of this. That's the address. We'll share that after this, but please, as many of you can, please go and look at the questionnaire there. Please give us your feedback because that will help determine how we take this forward. That's me, I think. Next slide, please. Yes, so thank you. That's me. My address there. I think you all know who I am anyway, but please get in touch if you want. I'll hand over to Brad now, but if you can think of any questions, put them in the Q&A, then we will try and answer them at the end of the session.
Just before Bradley gets going, Darren, I should know this and I don't. Your slides, are we going to be posting those on the TTF website by any chance?
We will indeed. The new shiny TTF website that we launched in the summer that all of you should have firmly bookmarked by now. Absolutely we will.
Excellent. Okay, so easily found. I think if you don't have the URL for it, simply type Transport Technology Forum into your browser of choice, and it will take you there. And amongst many other things, you can track what's going on with traffic as we emerge from COVID, which is certainly one of the data sources that I think TTF has excelled at. And thank you to everyone who's taken part in that. Right, enough from me for the moment. Over to Bradley.
Thanks, Steve and Darren, for that. Can I just do a quick screen check? Can you see my screen, Darren, Steve?
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
Okay, great. So yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Bradley Taylor. I'm the UK Sales Director for INRIX, and I'm just going to do a little bit of a whistle-stop tour about the SBRI project. And as Darren's already kind of done that plug about TTF, we'll be doing a bit more of an in-depth discussion there. So please come along to that. So today is really just in particular about how we've developed the platform and how it can be used specifically to analyze traffic signal performance. And of course, aligning well with the funding being provided by Darren and team. So a little bit about the project. Being an SBRI funded competition, the PATH project had a challenge set out by the DFT. This was to look at how we could make better use of data and support local authorities in reducing congestion. Our project specifically looked at how we could use floating vehicle data to understand the traffic signal junctions performance, of which would then help you local authorities focus on the worst performing sites and target those. Equally, we want to provide some metrics around that to measure those improvements. So upgrades that you're making, such as timing changes, putting them onto scoot and mover, or equipment changes. So we've provided a metrics built within the tool to help analyze that. The project also produced a platform of tools, so that fits under the banner of the name PATH. And equally, what was really important to us throughout the project is to work with local authorities. So we actually developed this with 12 local authorities to capture their user needs, and some of them are no doubt on the call today. So thank you for their time and effort on this. But all of the requirements that we've set out here were captured from iterative process and user feedback. So that research actually founded by the local authorities. The primary thing that we kind of focused on was actually the ability to zoom in on a set of locations. That was kind of the core user case that came out of it. Much of it was actually originated due to how traffic signals are controlled in an urban environment, typically through corridors and regions. So we started with some really high-level real-time information because that became quite prominent in our conversation. And just gave a quick picture of the key activities and incidents that are on the road network. You can then drill down into some customized routes and corridors that you as a user would create, and then that we would upload into the platform. And that would then essentially gather all of the floating vehicle data across several different time periods and split those across various different weeks for comparative purposes. Once the data is then ingested into the platform, it would then be processed, and then all the features would start to come online. And those features are shown on screen there, essentially the heat map, the curtain bead diagram, and the turning movement diagram, which I'll dive into shortly. So quickly, I didn't want to spend too much time on this, but this is just a real-time view that's part of the PATH platform. It's just give you a quick high-level overview of the incidents that are occurring in your road network and your geography, and you can kind of dive into those in specific detail if needed. But obviously, that's not the primary user case for this. So moving through, how does this platform actually help you understand your traffic signal performance and provide the most important thing, which is tangible evidence and data? So how we do that, the first thing here, now it's likely that most of the local authorities on the call today will probably already know which sites and areas that they'd like to focus. By doing so, what we would suggest you do is you'd create those corridors from your starting point. So you'd have a start and an end point, as you can see on the map there. You'd define that corridor and then send that corridor through to us, which would then automatically pull through all of the associated traffic signal junctions that you see on the screen. Once doing that, what we actually do is we break up the road network into smaller segments and then use the underlying floating vehicle data to analyze each of these segments against a set of performance indicators. And then these segments could be associated to a junction, leading up to a junction, or even through a junction. This map that you're actually seeing right now is already done that processing, and you can actually see quite faintly, depending on the clarity of your screens, but you can see that the road actually gets a little bit thicker as you get through down to the bottom of the finish line down there, and that is actually just indicating the how bad that road network is, or how bad those segments are. So then, by breaking up those segments, what we actually do is produce this heat map, one of the first features. So the heat map essentially guides the user to where the key problem areas are. So the darker spots are the higher numeric values. The higher numeric values are the worst performing indicator. And then quite quickly, you can your eyes are drawn to where that worst performance area is. And what you're seeing right now is actually just a week's worth of aggregated data. And then how you compare that, you can then do a comparative against the same week. So this is actually a real live example. We've taken a certain week in April versus a following year in a later, another April, sorry, in a later year, and to see if any improvements have been made. And quite quickly, again, to the untrained eye, you can see that the after study shows that there is less deep purple in that screen. So you can see that there has been improvements in that corridor, specifically in the center of that corridor and also towards the latter of that corridor. And both of those areas have associated traffic signal junctions with them. So you can then dive a little bit deeper into the data and actually look at what we call the curtain bead diagram. This feature actually only pulls the completed journeys across the entirety of the route. So whilst previously you'd capture all sorts of people coming onto the network at different points, this is only looking at the entirety of vehicles that have done the start to the end, and then assesses that performance. In this example, we actually see that on a Tuesday, again, you may not be able to see on your screen, so apologies, but this is specifically a Tuesday, which is that blue flat line there. A vehicle was stopped for a prolonged period. Most likely it's due to the result of something happening on the road network as a disturbance there, but it could also potentially be that someone has pulled over at a set of lights, sorry, to then cause that delay. But what you're really interested in is seeing that trend. So if you see that happening regularly throughout your traffic signals, then you can quite quickly identify that clearly at this junction, they are being stopped for a prolonged period, helping you really identify the problem sites. Okay, then finally, we move on to the turning movements, and this is displayed at each of those junctions along the corridor you've defined. So we break out every single turning movement along that corridor. It gives you an understanding of the observed vehicle counts from the INRIX data, so you can really help quantify the results that we've provided. And then behind this, we also can provide the associated journey times and delays that you would need for an economic assessment. Sorry. Then moving on. So as Darren's already outlined it today, for the DFT to continue offering programs like this, it's really important that you evidence and prove that you've really made significant benefits to your traffic signal spending. How we can help. So Path is really an oven-ready product, albeit each local authority will require a little bit of baking to produce what we've seen on screen, but it is essentially ready to go with very little upfront pay. Equally, as a business, we're really keen on taking this product further. We recognise that Signals and this Path project has developed, we think, something quite unique and innovative, and a different way of monitoring your road network as opposed to the typical, I would say, more cumbrous looking at your UTC system and having to dive into that data. You can quite quickly pull it out through this this platform. So there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to transfer what you see as the Path product into the INRIX, what we're calling Signals product, which will be a short transition process. So we anticipate in a matter of months that we should have this live, and our engineering team are working pretty hard to get that in place. So my proposal today is that we can essentially get things going, start supporting some of your analysis under this program, under the banner of Path, and then in a matter of months transition you across into the INRIX branded version, which hopefully you'll see just from the mock-ups on screen here that is more user friendly. So that's a very quick tour of the SBRI project that we've done. As I say, I'm going to go into more detail at the TTF conference. So if you can make it, please do. Otherwise, there's my email is on screen. Drop me an email. I'm more than happy to take you through the detail of the Path platform and then talk about kind of how we can support you. So that's me, and thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Bradley. Interesting stuff. So we've now got about 20 minutes in total for a bit of a conversation, hopefully to answer any questions people attending the meeting have. I can only see ones, Alec, that are getting typed into the chat, and at the moment one question is in there which I think we can all see, but it looks like it's headed to Darren's direction, and I think it comes in two parts really. So there's a reference to local transport note 120, and the question is whether schemes funded by the grants you've been handing out here are to be subject to inspection by the inspectorate described in this guidance, which is a new one on me. I missed LTN 120 as it came whizzing past, so if you can explain that, Darren, that would be good. But also whether there's a risk of a clawback if authorities, having received the funding, can't in practice deliver a green scoring junction despite having implemented the maintenance. So what's going on with LTN 120, and is there a clawback regime? Darren.
Thank you, Steve. LTN 120 is the Designing Cycle Infrastructure local traffic note. So this is about how you design cycle infrastructure, and there are potential teeth in there around green scoring and around ensuring that stuff is built to the right standard. We're not at all intending to do that as part of this process, and there are only very limited ways in which we can claw back the money, and they are set out in the letter, and they are to do with using it as revenue and some of the very sort of technical financing stuff. We won't be inspecting people's schemes on that at that level. We will be expecting people to build infrastructure that works, and we will be looking to work with people and their monitoring and evaluation schemes to understand that the money has been spent in ways that work. But no, we won't be clawing money back. But we will be working with you throughout the program to ensure that, or to help you stay on track and stay delivering the right type of technology.
So I think the chances of having the money clawed back would be if it was not put to the use intended, or if for some reason it just wasn't getting spent. Is that the idea?
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay. So I think the important thing, as Darren said right at the start, is the DFT thinks the money has been sent. So get onto your finance team and track it down and get out there and spend it, because we're very keen to see the results. One of the things that intrigues me from that question, Darren, is that, as you say, LTN 120, the cycling scheme, a whole framework of checking seems to be being set up there with the inspectorate. I don't know if the inspectorate's actually been brought into being yet, but if we were successful with these, I like to think of them as Pathfinder schemes here, could we envisage a bit more of a formal framework of reporting back how well the traffic impacts of this investment are measuring up?
I think yes. I think the process we've set up could become more formal. I think it's very likely that we will be looking in the near future to understand more about carbon and congestion in urban areas, and I think new reporting regimes may well come around that, and I think this will form part of that. Yeah.
And just how quickly are we expecting these schemes to be implemented? We're heading into autumn now. Obviously, we're in the last knockings of September. Is this money that's going to carry on into next year? Or are we expecting this all to be done by Christmas, as the saying goes?
No, we have a slightly there's a little bit of invention to be done around here. So we initially intended this to be a 1-year award, but the fact that we've not actually handed the money out until the end of September means that would be unfair. So we are now stipulating that people spend this money before the end of March 2023. So have 18 months to spend.
Okay.
Assuming we get funding next year to run this again, then we will have to determine a mechanism for how authorities that are already funded are refunded, or that money is distributed to people who haven't been funded that time. That's something we need to design into this process. But hopefully, if we do get some certainty about yearly funding, we can then move to a proper 12-monthly renewing program rather than this slightly odd arrangement we have at the start.
And I wonder, this might be me posing a question to our audience, but two things that I heard very often in my time back in the department from colleagues in local government was just how much they love another competition that they've got to spend time and quite often consultancy money to enter in the hope that they'll win something, but not necessarily getting it. But also whether having a fund for traffic signals and a fund for highway maintenance and a fund for cycle priorities, too many penny packets. Is this something that's concerning folks at the DFT?
It is, and we know that the Treasury are not that keen on competitions. We know that the Ministry of Housing and Local Government and Communities recognises that local authorities are made to jump through too many hoops and spend too much time filling in competition responses, and that needs to change. I think what we're trying to do here, and this will come out in the guidance, is in the future years, as long as the challenges stay the same, we really want this to become a cut and paste exercise. And we want authorities to be evidencing what the authority is already doing in response to the challenges, rather than writing reams and reams of new text around it. So that's really where we want to get to with this. But again, as we get more of a feel for what's happening out there, as we get more of a feel for the state of traffic signals and state of maintenance, I think we will be able to streamline the process.
Okay, because I definitely recognise one of the things you said from the in-person TTF events that I had the pleasure of chairing back in the before. Certainly one of the things that came through loud and clear was a problem with finding the money to maintain signals systems, to understand the systems and actually fine-tune them to operate as the designers had originally intended, but also a problem of skills that some authorities were really struggling with, not just finding the money to do things, but finding the people to do things. Is that something that either the TTF or the department has in its sights?
It is. So we have a God, this is almost like it was pre-rehearsed. I've got a great answer for that question. So
Darren, you're supposed to tell the audience that this was carefully pre-rehearsed and this is a very slick production, if you don't mind.
I would if I thought people would believe that, but anyway, yeah, we are doing a lot of work around this at the moment. So we are looking at skills in ITS. we are looking at skills at a number of levels. So we're working with the IHE at the moment to potentially produce some ITS training. We're also working with the IET to produce training around for sort of management and engineer level grades to understand ITS. And we're potentially working with some universities around postgrad courses in ITS. We're trying to build that whole picture up. That's new training. I think there is also an issue, as you said, about enough existing resource. How do we bring more people into the profession? That's a big discussion that I think we need to have. But there is certainly an appetite in the department to deal with that. We do realise that's a major impediment to dealing with this.
Well, I've just noticed that there are questions being posted in the chat, and I didn't realise I had to scroll down them. So that's my IT skills thoroughly shot to pieces. I'm going to come up with one here, but I think one of the first things I want to do is actually to come back to you for a moment, Bradley. So I saw those, the table of numbers and the graphs and those, I think we call them curtain diagrams whizzing past, and I'm sure that everyone on this call who's a traffic professional saw those and thought, absolutely, I get those. But I was just wondering, for those of us who aren't the traffic engineers, I'm thinking here of the general motoring public or people who might be looking at things like the TTF website traffic data. Is there any ambition for some of this data to go into the public domain and to help the public understand, the road user understand how well their system is working, how well their local authority is doing?
Yeah, good question, Steve. So performance indicators are a challenge in themselves anyway, but yes, we are. His short answer is, and actually, as Darren's already highlighted, that there's a bit of a shortage of the expertise in the industry in this field anyway. To try and shift away from that, what we're doing is moving from when we move from the path product to the INRIX version, is try to simplify those performance indicators such that whether you're a traffic engineer or perhaps just even, I don't know, a modeler or a director or something like that, it's fairly standardized and then everyone can understand it at the various levels that you may have at a technical expertise. So one of the approaches actually to grade them. So as opposed to have it as a numeric value that means X, Y, and Z, what we're trying to do is potentially grade traffic signals. So that it just simply says this is a grade A junction or a grade F junction, you know, grade A being really good, grade F being really bad, so that anyone can kind of simply understand that to say, yeah, this traffic signal performance is performing very badly, therefore you need to look at it. So we completely understand that people that are going to look at this product have a various different skill sets. So trying to simplify that is something that we are keen to do, and you will see in the INRIX productized version.
Excellent. Now I'm going to crack through some of these questions because I'm apologizing to the audience here. So I'll read out a couple of them and then I think I'm mostly going to go your way, Darren. So question one was, when will the report and the toolkit be available? And then someone's asking who was successful for a £250,000 bid, but they're wondering whether there's an authority out there that has a showcase bid that everyone can learn from. So when's the report coming out, and what are we doing to build something of a community of interest here, Darren, so that people who've got the exciting Pathfinder work can share their knowledge, their expertise, and their experience with others?
Okay, so as I said, hopefully the reports will come out around Christmas time, probably January. I think we'll have them out. That will be two documents. One, the state of the nation. One, a toolkit. The toolkit will feature exemplar answers. We'll probably spare people's blushes by not naming the exemplar authorities. We may do, but we will certainly lift out the exemplar answers that we found and allow those to be used as showcases. So we will do that. Yeah, in terms of a community, I hope this is a start of one. I would like to build on this now, and certainly as we start to get people uploading their programs and we start to see people using the programs, as we start to get the reports out, I'd like to repeat this and keep us all talking about progress and how we are working towards the delivery of this project.
Okay, that's good. Now we've got a question here about balancing the need to improve things for active travel with trying to tackle congestion, and I think here congestion probably means vehicular traffic congestion. And in tuning the traffic signals, and I think I'm going to come to you on this as well, Bradley. So when you're thinking about the performance of a junction, of course, performance can mean many things. It could be, are we getting the maximum number of vehicles through? Are we getting the maximum number of motor vehicles through? Or are we getting the maximum number of people through? So first up with Darren, is the most important thing to protect bus and bicycle journey times, potentially at the cost of other motor vehicles? And then Bradley, will come to you on how do we deal with the mix of traffic?
Well, without wanting to dodge the answer, I think that's really why we ask people to evidence the policies that they have in place rather than mandating what the answer is, because I think we accept that the policy imperatives in Liverpool are probably different from the policy imperatives in Derbyshire. And actually, what we're looking to do is for each authority to set out the rules and policies and imperatives it's using to manage its network, which will be different. And as long as authorities have an understanding, a good, solid, structured way of assessing that and thinking about different road users and thinking about wider policies that their authorities have, wider aspirations they have, and are using that to help form their judgment about how this funding is spent, that's what we really want. We want each area to determine its own future for its best, really, rather than be mandated from on high, from Whitehall.
Okay, and Bradley, then you're talking about perhaps even having a letter grading for the performance of a junction, but how do we go about weighing performance in terms of the different forms of traffic that are going to be passing through a junction?
Yeah, it's important to kind of keep I'm going to say, an agnostic balance of what the priorities should be at those junctions. So whether your priority is pedestrians or whether it's buses or vehicular traffic, we have to slightly remain segregated from that and just provide key values and metrics that are associated with how that junction is performing. Vehicle delay is one of those. There are other metrics that we would make available within the platform to say how well a vehicle is traveling through it. So for instance, split failures, as you go through a junction, are you getting through green on the first time? Those types of things. There are several other metrics that can help determine how that set of traffic signals is performing, but we are not going to influence necessarily the strategic approach of it. We're not saying that you should therefore pedestrianize this or improve the pedestrian facilities. That is for the local authority to decide. We are just giving you the values that are associated with that traffic signal junction for you to determine the best approach in how you prioritize that.
Okay, thank you very much. Now then, I think a bit of criticism here, Darren, about the UK signal numbering initiative and the follow-up questionnaire. Have we missed a trick, perhaps, in not using the ADEPT network for mailing this out, or the traffic advisory leaflet mailing list? So the correspondent here, I can't see anyone's names here, so the correspondent saying, first I heard about this was at JCT.
Yeah, the first anyone heard about it was at JCT. That's where we announced it. We are starting to announce it more widely. We are working with Adept, and we will be working with Topaz and others. So you will receive this by a number of means, I think, over the next few weeks. So yes, good point though. Good point. Yeah, we will definitely try and use as many of the networks that we know about as possible.
Okay.
But again, the public ones as well. If people want to share it via LinkedIn, via make a TikTok about it, whatever, then please do.
All right, thank you. One for you, Bradley, here, which is, can other data capturing traffic movements on our networks be integrated into Path?
Yeah, that's really good. So there's this thing in the market that we kind of see as called bring your own data. It's coming up more frequently in this space. We as a business recognize that local authorities want to maximize their existing data and not necessarily always have to look to companies like us to provide that data for them, but mix it in with some of their others. So this concept of bring your own data has been thought about. We've tested that concept with SBRI Path. In particular, we actually integrated it with Glossa data, with the City of York, who supported that. We're still looking at potentially taking that a little further with Path. So the short answer in the Path instance is yes, but we have to be really careful about how we transition that into a INRIX product. You know, we are obviously a global business. We do this in the UK as well as the rest of EMEA and the United States. So the concept of how we do this bring your own data needs to kind of transition nicely across each of those geographies. So we're working on different ways of how we actually do that. And you will eventually see different ways that we can allow you to bring your own data and integrate it into some of the services and product offerings that we have. So yeah, good question.
And I think not quite related, but in a similar vein, but I think this is one more for you, Darren. Authorities are using different private companies. Different companies are providing their analytics with different algorithms. What are we doing to ensure consistency and long-term continuity in the data that's being generated, captured, and shared? And is there perhaps more we could be doing to help local authorities on that front?
Yeah, I think there is more we can do. I think we obviously want to avoid the wild west of people with lots of different data formats and standards. We're producing some local authority guidance on data at the moment, which will be coming out very soon, which will start to set some of the basis for this. And we're also starting to work with INRIX and with others to start to think about national data sets and start to provide national data where we can and where that's necessary. And again, we will look to areas where there are potential market failures or holes in the market or opportunities, and we may well do that more frequently.
Okay, now time is ticking away. A couple more questions quickly. So, Darren, you said that some authorities got one sum of money, some authorities got a different sum of money. They all wanted as much as they could get, I would have thought. Well, what was the difference? What made you a 250k authority as opposed to a 500k?
We had £15 million. That was the budget we had. We wanted to spend as widely, distribute the money as widely as we could. We obviously graded people. We scored people based on the 7 responses, and that gave us a kind of a scored list from the very top to the very bottom. Those that did exceptionally well, we funded the full £500,000. We believe that they fully understand what we're trying to do with this, and we are willing to fund them. A band below that, we believe, are getting there. They have the right policies in place. They're not completely there yet. Those are the ones that we funded with £250,000 to get them started. I think what we will do with those is try and provide additional support going forward to get them up to the highest standard, and then maybe more funding will follow. Maybe we will have funding in the future to make that up. But it is very much about ensuring that we fairly match the very high performing nearly high-performing authorities with the £15 million that we had available. I think another point there, just to make, which is kind of related to one of the questions, is as anyone that's looked at the list will see, that hasn't resulted in us just funding the stars. You know, okay, so we have funded Kent and Oxfordshire and the big players. We've also funded some much smaller authorities, Wokingham, St Helens, and places. I think we've achieved a very good spread of very large, very small authorities, very well funded, not so well funded. So I think. That process seems to have worked quite well in terms of the range of people we've been able to support.
Well, that was going to be the last question that I asked you, because we're coming to the end of the cast now. But perhaps looking ahead, let's hope that we can generate the evidence base that we've been talking about. Let's hope we can come up with a business case that is going to be persuasive to folks in the DFT and in the Treasury. Might we see the development of this program doing more to tackle the levelling up that somebody has asked about? The fact that, you know, some authorities are more advanced, they have invested more money perhaps, they might have more skilled teams, they might just have better infrastructure in place. Are we thinking about this as something where we're going to reward the trailblazers, or are we going to be more focused on trying to get everywhere up to a decent standard?
I think the latter. I don't really want to keep funding the authorities that are very good at this stuff, because that's not really achieving what I want to achieve. And certainly the reason for not doing this in a very kind of mechanistic way and just you tell us how many junctions you can fix and we'll give you some money is because that would reward the star performers. And actually this process has allowed us to reward others as well. Hopefully in the future, I mean, this is all capital money. I don't think we'll ever be able to award any revenue money, but hopefully in the future we'll be able to award funding for things like supporting training, supporting apprenticeships, possibly supporting some of the skills around just fixing equipment. It would be good if we could do that. I think if one of the things we prove for this process is that there are lots of things that we still need to get right, and it's not all perfect, that again is an impetus for government to provide more funding into this area. So hopefully, yes.
Splendid. Okay, well that potentially is raising the curtain on the what would he say? The end of the rainbow is where the resource money sits as opposed to the capital. But for the moment, we've got the capital, we've got it into people's accounts. We now want to see delivery. I'm starting to sound a little bit like the Prime Minister, which is extremely disturbing, so I'm going to stop. I'm going to say thank you very much to Bradley. I'm going to say thank you to Darren. I'm going to say thank you to all 120 or so of you who attended this. If you thought this was useful and interesting, hopefully we'll be able to host more useful, interesting TTF fireside chats as the autumn wears on. But in the meantime, it sounds like you've all got a lot of work to do and we're all counting on you. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you all.